The roll backstab. The strafe. The pivot. The Zoidberg. Raviolis. Roll-in punishes. Side roll punishes. Whatever the fuck just happened. Whee. Over the past several years, we've been consistently developing and borrowing tech from previous games to make backstabs viable in Elden Ring. But there was still just one thing that we couldn't get to work consistently. One way that a person could always avoid getting backstabbed that we just couldn't do anything about. Rolling backwards. Backstabs in Elden Ring are... well, they suck. Or at least when compared to previous Souls titles. Elden Ring's backstabs work on a two-sided confirmation for both players' position and their direction. This is different than how it worked in Dark Souls 3, where the angle check was only on a one-sided confirmation. So even if the opponent turned to face you on their perspective, then the backstab would still connect. With this being changed in Elden Ring, backstabs are a lot more inconsistent and difficult to land, and people started giving up on backstab fishing altogether. But just now, we finally solved one of the biggest problems that we've been suffering with landing backstabs in Elden Ring. And in our efforts to uncover the tech needed to reliably land this backstab, we discovered something that we didn't even think was possible. So in this video, I'll be teaching you about the backwards roll catch, the body block, and how we discovered the reverse roll backstab. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you found this information helpful at all, or if you're just more confused than ever. Up until this point, we've been able to come up with a solution for pretty much any circumstance to reliably land a backstab if we correctly predict the opponent's next move. Do they mash? Backstab. Do they panic roll forward? Backstab. Do they panic roll sideways? Backstab. Can they be strafed? Backstab. Do they just stand there looking at you like a dumbass? Backstab. But if they roll directly away from you, then there's pretty much nothing that you could do about it. Until today. Now mind you, this tech is by no means easy. This is currently the most complicated, precise, and difficult backstab that you can do. So if you aren't familiar with the intricacies of backstabs, how they work, and tech related to them, then I first recommend that you check out my masterclass on backstab fishing. But continuing on. The first thing that I'll cover is the backwards roll catch. The setup for this begins with having the opponent locked in an animation before going for the backstab. So your best option for setting this up is by stunning your opponent with something that has a high level of hit stun, while also having a short recovery, such as a running R2 from a thrusting sword or a pada, or a running R1 from a halberd or great spear. But even with these setups, you still won't have enough time to get in position to go for the backstab. This is where we get into handy tech. Handy tech simply refers to soft swapping your weapon, cancelling the remaining recovery frames of your attack, and giving you immediate sprinting speed. By handy teching after your initial attack, you can get behind the opponent in time to set up the grab. So you land the hit and you start your strafe. Your positioning is vital. As you move behind your opponent, they will continue to track your position as you move. So you need to deviate to the left as you move behind them. Ultimately, your route should look a little like this, in order to put you in your best position to set up the grab. Once you get in position behind them, then it's time to go for the grab. But in order to cue it, you have to block cancel your pivot in order to correctly get the angle to go for the backstab. In order to do this, you have to block with your shield, pass your direction stick through the dead zone of your controller, and pull it straight into the direction that you want to be facing. As soon as you face that direction, cue the attack. If you don't do this perfectly, then your pivot will either be too slow, or the game will eat your input, and you'll just be stuck standing there holding your shield up like an idiot. If you do all of this perfectly, then you can get the grab on the backwards roll. But when we were trying to figure out how the fuck to land this thing, spending hours upon hours of fucking it up, we began to notice that the player would get stuck on my body during their roll. At first, this was just annoying, but this ended up being a key factor in being able to land this grab consistently. The body block method allows you to shorten the distance of the opponent's roll, forcing them to get stuck on your player model. It's the most consistent between 50 and 125 milliseconds of latency, but the positioning is very tight, and you need to cut across the opponent's path exceptionally early in order for it to be successful. But by blocking the path of their roll, you can get them stuck on your body as if they were rolling into a barrier, letting you cue the grab much earlier and with a lot more success than with the standard backwards roll catch. But let me tell you, this is a pain in the fucking ass. There are so many aspects of this setup that can go wrong, and if you're just one frame off, then you'll miss your shot. But at the very least, this is possible on anything up to 160 milliseconds of latency from our testing. But while we were testing these backstabs, we started to notice something peculiar. This is where we get into the reverse roll backstab. For context, the most consistent backstab that you can land on a player is the forward roll backstab, where they roll forward and toward you, and you catch them out of their roll as they come in. So now, let's take a look at this clip here. Same setup, land a hit, get behind the backwards roll, and then they forward roll. But why? According to the opponent, they were still holding backwards on the controller. No forward input was given. So then, how did they end up doing a forward roll? We tested this over and over, and each time it was consistent. This is actually related to a type of storage. When a player executes a roll, it retains the data of its initial direction. If they roll again, then the game will use the data given by the initial direction as a reference. But if you force the player's perspective to flip 180 degrees, then their inputs at the controller will be flipped as well, since the game still registers their directions from their initial position, so left becomes right and backwards becomes forwards. We see this in other things as well, such as with quickstep, where if you circle around the opponent and they move in past you, forcing you to turn 180 degrees, then your follow-up input of quickstep will be reversed in the direction of your input. So, if you get behind where their camera is facing during their first roll, then the second one will make them commit to a forward roll, and if they're just holding backwards on their direction stick, then they'll end up rolling directly in toward you, allowing you for a much easier and more consistent backstab. And all you have to do is cross the line between where they were starting and where they ended their first roll. Once their perspective gets flipped, then they'll input a forward roll if they roll the second time and come straight toward you, and then from there it's just a simple forward roll catch. This is the reverse roll backstab. So how viable is it? Is it something that you can incorporate into your gameplay, and is it something that's going to have an impact on the meta? First and foremost, the only thing that this punishes is people that panic roll in a predictable way. By exercising good roll discipline, then you'll never have to worry about being caught by these types of backstabs. So no, it won't have an effect on the meta, but it is absolutely something that you can make use of with enough time and practice to perfect these techniques. The body block and reverse roll backstabs are the most consistent setups, but you can absolutely land a backwards roll catch if you have enough brain rot to spend the hours needed to get good at it. But backstab fishing has never been about going for optimal play or competitive edge. It's about doing cool shit in a video game and looking sexy as fuck while you do it. So try it out, and post a clip on Reddit or something so I can pop off at seeing you land this shit. Well, that's gonna do it for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.